morning, everyone. We left in the middle of Nun Vav. That was a few weeks ago, and I want to go over Nun Vav again. And as I looked at it, I saw new things as if I didn't learn it at all. So I'm going to share. Says Reb Tzadok, Hashem Yisparach Nosan HaTorah Bal Korcham Shel Yisrael. We learned this Erev Shavuos, that the way Matan Torah worked, it was Bal Korcham Shel Yisrael. We're all familiar with the Gemara, which tells us that when it came to, we all came to Har Sinai and we all came to Matan Torah, and for some reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to be Kofa Aleinu, or Kafa Alehem, as the Gemara says, Har Kehillas, he held the mountain on top of our head, whether that means literally or figuratively, but we were forced into Kabbalas HaTorah. If you're Makabal the Torah, good, V'im lav sham tehek v'raschem, and if you're not Makabal the Torah, this is your end. Your end means that I took you out of Mitzrayim to be Jews, and if you're Makabal the Torah, you'll be Jews. If not, so you're like everybody else, so sham tehek v'raschem. This will be the end of it. The Greeks ended, the Romans ended, the Egyptians ended. This you'll end, sham tehek v'raschem. So we could expand it allegorically just to drop, to understand, like the Maharal does, that we were forced by by the awe of the moment, and but we were also threatened. That Kabbalas HaTorah was given to us by force, even though we said Nasa v'nishma. Nasa v'nishma, we are extolled for this, and we take credit for this for all of our history. Nasa v'nishma, everybody else said, we don't know, maybe, let's see what's in it. But we said Nasa v'nishma, we'll take the Torah. Nevertheless, Kaf aleim har kehillas, which sounds like a contradiction, Stira minei obey, no? But the point of this is that, the point of Reb Tzadok, and we're going to answer that question, is that sometimes Hashem forces us to do the right thing. Kafa aleim har kehillas means that even though we have bechira chavshis, we always have the choice, but nevertheless, sometimes we're forced. So how do you have free choice if you're forced? How does that work? So it probably works. I'm adding the same way as is famous in the Rambam, in the Gemara, by a get, koifenoi sayat sheyem roitzani. We know that a get has to, let's just speak it out for a second, we know that if somebody's giving a get to a woman, so he has to give it miratzon, he has to give it midas, he has to give it, there has to be a real, you can't coerce someone to give a get. It's simply not a get. Just a problem that many poskim have with New York State law that forces the get law. It's coercion, and coercion is not beseder. But nevertheless, we see in Chazal that this was the minhag, that if a person was a get refuser, so Kofanoso Based in would force him. How did they force him? I'm not sure about, because Margus, whatever they did. But Kofanoso Ad Sheyoymar, until he says, okay, I want to give a get. So you see this concept of, he's saying he's being forced on the one hand, and on the other hand, he has bechira chavshis. Does he have free choice, or he doesn't have free choice? The get has to be given out of your choice, not out of coercion. So he's saying, Kofanoso, you're not giving it out of your free choice. Achiyama roitzani, nunvav. Achiyama roitzani sounds like I'm choosing. So let me note that perhaps that's the same idea of nasa v'nishma and kofel of har kehillas. In other words, there's two things working at once, and that's really what we have to discover. But what we see so far is that there is such a thing as Hashem forcing us to choose correctly. So it's stira midei obey. You're forcing somebody to choose that he's not choosing. But by Jews, he could be like that. By Jews, it could be that kofanoso ad she'omer rotzani pashat pshat, because I have like an inner ratzon. And just before I say anything else, I just, I noticed this in my, I noticed this over the weekend that somebody got on a diving board. I happened to see some kid got on a diving board. He was afraid to dive. Now, he was in his bathing suit. He knew why he's going on the diving board. He walked to the end of the diving board. He's ready to jump in the diving board. This is his rotza. So why don't jump already? Ad shaba aviv. So, and as he's going down, it's right Sunday. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So sometimes you need a little push. So, kovados achiyomer is that push, l'chora, I think. And it's the same concept which we're learning today of kafa aleim har kegigis. It was I don't think the kafa aleim means lashon kippah. Kafa aleim har kegigis. I don't think it's lashon kfiyah. Maybe they're connected. Forcing somebody and maybe they're connected, but leave that for a different time to examine. But that's the situation here. Hashem Yisbarach Nasan HaTorah Bal Korcham Shal Yisrael K'maisha Amru Chazal B'Shabbos Perak Rabbi Akiva. Everybody knows. M'chein La'asid K'maisha Nemar B'Yad Chazaka Emleich Aleichem, which we spent a lot of time on last time. We learned this, but I just want to remind you that after the Beis HaMikdash was Nechrav B'Rishayna, after the first Churban Beis HaMikdash, and we went into Golus. Now, this was the first time we were in Golus. In other words, we went out of Mitzrayim, we marched to Eretz Yisrael for 40 years, and there we were until the Churban Bayis Rishon. That's a long time, but that was the time of all the Nevi'im and all the Malachim, and there was Am Yisrael, Mapshelas Yisrael, Malchus Yisrael, the Nevi'ei Yisrael, all of that took place, and then it ended. The Babylonians destroyed the Beis HaMikdash and exiled us. So that was the end of it. So when we went out of Eretz Yisrael, the Navi says in Yecheskel that the Ziknei Ha'am, the Gedolim, the Tzadikim, the leaders of the people came to Yecheskel and they said, if it's all over, it's all over. So, give us a p'tur. We don't have to be Jews anymore. Which is probably what anybody would say. In other words, obviously, it's all over. And Yecheskel then gave what might be the most important prophecy for Golus. And that is not so fast. Golus is part of being Klal Yisrael. It's not over. You've only just begun. The fact, just like you have to be in Mitzrayim and go through that. So you're going through Golus. This is not the end of the relationship. We're right there. And in fact, if it's all about Ava, I think about it in a very real sense. That let's say you have little kids in the house, so you could be in a real grumpy mood. You can really yell at your kids, push them to the side, send them to their room. But if your kid's friend is in the house, you're always nice to him. Want some hot chocolate? Actually, a kid could look at this as, two-faced, what's going on over here? You're just doing this for your image, and you're not really like that. You're a monster. But in fact, it's no stira, because I don't care as much about that other kid. I can give him the hot chocolate. But my kid, it's a whole question of chinuch. So when the Ziknei Am came to Yecheskel and they said, "Listen, if it's over, it's over." And he said to them, no, it's not over. And not only it's not over, but biyad chazaka emleich aleichem. And I just want to repeat this from what I spoke about last time, that Malchus is always miratzin. Ki l'Hashem ha'melucha u'moshel b'goyim. That, God is God, whether you accept it or you don't accept it, whether you want to do his ratzin, you don't want to do his ratzin. The difference is that a moshel is a type of a king which forces himself on you. A melech is a melech b'layam. A melech is someone, we don't elect Hashem, but we understand Hashem. So if we understand Hashem, what are we coming and saying, like, we don't want to be part of it any longer, or maybe we shouldn't be part of it any longer? So the answer is that, again, that this is not a steer. If we don't learn anything else today but this, there's no contradiction between koif and oisai and roitzani. there's those contradiction between Nasiv and Nishma and Kaf Aleim Har Kehillas. There's no contradiction. Sometimes you need a push, or even be forced, or even be hurt in order to do your ratzon, not to do the ratzon Hashem, to do your ratzon. You know, I want to point out which is perhaps a yeshivish mistake that the Chazal say that you know that we came with a taina to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We came to a taina with a taina to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look, you forced us into Kaf Aleim Har Kehillas. You forced us into Yiddishkeit. Now you want to do din. It was your choice, not our choice. The Chazal end up there by saying Kimu v'kiblu in Purim time. Kimu v'kiblu. We had a normally translated, I just want to get the nuance here, normally translated is, okay, but we did accept the Torah, miratzon, in the time of Achashverosh and time of Purim. So what does it mean? It means that during the time of Golus, we saw Nes, and we saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu's with us, afilu behastara, even in the darkest places of Persia, afilu begolus, and we were makabel the Torah. No. Kimu, they were makabel the Torah. V'kiblu masha kiblu kvar, the Gemara says. They were makabel what they were already makabel. It's not that there was a new Kabbalah Torah, just the nuance. It's that they were makabel, kibu, they were makabel masha kiblu kvar. The old Kabbalah Torah was still standing. So, meaning, it was. So what was the title? What's the shiloh? What's the tshuva? Shiloh is that l'chari you did the whole thing bal karcha kaf aleim har kehillas. So what's the answer? Kibu basha kiblu kvar. That from Purim time we can see what your real ratzon is, and your real ratzon was okay. Why? Because there you were in Golos, and that was your real ratzon. So kibu basha kiblu kfar. It's a lemafreya, if you will. It goes back retroactively on the original Kabbalah. So it's not that the Kabbalah Torah was then. We had a Kabbalah Torah, then people say Torah, but I mean it's Torah Shebiksav, that's Torah Shebal Peh, all kinds of things that are said about this. Pashat Pshat is it's like a kiyum of edus, you know.
Even if you do Purim, as I was see, I saw placed in this danger.
Which is really the vart of Reb Tzadok, that just because you're pushed off the diving board doesn't mean that you don't want to die. So just because we had Yisurim, Bimei Achashverosh and Haman, and we were scared the heck out of us, like this was total annihilation. You think we're scared today? I mean, total annihilation, Haman, Hitler. And even in that, Hastara, if you will, we were Makayim, but it's kiderech. There's a lashon of Chazal. Kimu masha kiderech kiyum ha'edun. It's like yes, yes, we're in. That's what it means. Kimu. Not that they were makayim in the mitzvahs, but kimu. They did a kiyum ha'edus masha kiblu kvar.
We're in the process of the Achashverosh story because of Kabbalah. Was it later? Was it often?
When Esther said, as far as I know, when Esther said Sumo Alai, she was machzir the whole olam to tshuva. Tshuva itself is just a pasuk shot of tshuva is you're returning. It's not that you're not gerus.
Isn't Abbas Hanes, wasn't it the Lashon?
Lashon said Lashon were out.
So from the next part of it, the positive, not the positive part, was because we saw the positive ending. Right?
Which is why that's where we did our kiyum, you mean?
Yeah. So Kibble is brought in the context of the time afterwards when they actually won the war and started setting up Purim.
But we also saw that Hashem scared us. So what we saw was the frightening part of it was all part of the process. That's all. Like the frightening part of it was all part of the process, whether B'kayv there, B'kayv there, B'kayv.
Where does this special part of neshama come from? I mean, is it from
Oh, let's learn. Biyad chazaka amloich aleichem. Biyad chazaka Emlech Aleichem, it's unto itself an oxymoron, yeah? That's the point. Biyad Chazaka sounds very stark. Sounds, let's put it in my words, sounds like Midas Hadin. And Emlech Aleichem is Ki Lashem Amlucha. Is Ein Melech B'Layam, or Makabel the Ratzah. Cholam Makabel Aleim O Malchus Shamayim, that's Malchus. Rabbi Seinu Zal B'Perek Chelik, Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kra'uhu Ritcha. This concept, this very concept of, which is very Jewish, I guess, but this very concept of HaKadosh, of Kafa Aleim Har Kegigis, in all times, in all generations, in everybody's life, it's called a Ritcha. Now, I was looking this morning, I didn't do an extensive research on this, so I didn't check Google, etc. But does anybody else talk about this concept of Ritcha? I couldn't find, except for maybe they do. It must be in Sfar. But this that he says, Rabbi Seidu Kra'uhu Ritcha, let's give a name, says Reb Tzadok, to this idea of Hashem forcing us to do good because we really want to do good anyway. So that's called, we're going to call that now Ritcha. What does the word Ritcha mean? Anger. Efshar, that doesn't mean anger per se. Boiling. So what does it mean when something is boiling? It means that it in itself is, the Gemara says in Tainus, Haitzurba mirabanan the kamarasach. If Tzurba mirabanan is rasach, gets angry. Lav iu de kamarasach, eloi raisa de kamarascha be. The Gemara says, if you see a young Talmud Chacham, the Gemara makes a deal because there's a young Talmud Chacham. Older one gets mellowed a little. But if you see a young Talmud Chacham getting all angry, you go into a base medrash, and you see young guys learning, you say, what are they so angry about? You're ready to hit each other, So if you see a Tzurba Mirabanan, Rashi says Tzurba Mirabanan is like a yeshiva bacher. A Tzurba Mirabanan. So if you see a Tzurba Mirabanan, the kamarasach, that he's boiling over. That's right. He's angry means he's boiling over. Why is he boiling over? Boiling over what? Something inside is boiling over. The answer is Lav Iu de Kabarasa. Is that coming from any klipa or any chitzonius or any gashmius, or his nerves are dead, or just short fuse? No. Oiraisa, it's the Torah that he's learned, the Kabaras Chabe. We see this phenomenon like it's Oiraisa, it's the Torah, which is boiling over. What you're seeing over here is a davar shel kedusha, what you're seeing. You're not seeing. So when we talk about Ritcha, it's always this concept, I think, it's always this concept of, we say anger, but not really anger, but when something very, very deep is boiling over. So there could be, the Ritcha could be B'tzad Hashem, it could also be B'tzad Yisrael. That in other words, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns the heat on, Kafa Aleim Har Kegigis, we boil over. And we say Nasav Nishma or whatever the Seder Advarim was by Har Sinai, confusing. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about an inner peace, Koifanoisai, Achiyah Beroitzadi. Rabbi Seinu Zal Perek Chelik, Karohu, or Ritzcha, V'lachein Amru, B'Shabbos, Perek Rabbi Akiva. And this, I didn't explain when we learned this, I don't think. This is the pshat in the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos Peites Amud Beis, which is not, by the way, all you of the Bekim B'Shas here, it's not the Gemara about Har Sinai. That's Peiches. Peites Amud Beis is a different sugya, really. Al Pasa Ki Ata Avinu She Yitzchak Hu Hagoyel Al Yedei Midasei. This is this Gemara is, the Gemara talks about La'asid Lavai. It's in Peites Amud Beis. La'asid Lavai, there's going to come a time when Mashiach is supposed to come, like now. Amar Lai HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being done every minute. Is this the time for the Gula? Is tomorrow the time for the Gula? Friday's not a good day. There's a constant diyun in Shamayim right now. whether it's time for the geula or not. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit longer. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kiviyachol, Abraham HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avram, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes to Avram Avinu in the Shemayim. Avram Avinu is in Shemayim. Banecha Chatuli. You produced an Am Yisrael, and they're all doing Chatoim. They're not Al Pi Rov. Chai Yisrael is doing Chatoim. Now, Avraham Avinu was the big. This is the Pella of this Gemara. Avraham Avinu was the big Makarev. He was as you alluded to, he was the founder of the Mita of Ava, Chesed. Emes Yaakov Chesed LaAvram. He was the big Baal Chesed. So Hashem goes to Avraham Avinu, Kiviyachol thinking, just in our language, that, okay, Avraham Avinu is the one who's somehow going to be matzdik the Bnei Yisrael with his Chesed and with his Ava and get us out of Golus. Banecha Chatuli. Omer Lefanav says Avraham Avinu Rimanu Shloim Yimachu Al Kedusha Shemecha. So let him go. You know what that means? Is this a Pella or not? I mean, Yimachu Al Avraham Avinu, what happened to you? What happened? Too much Gan Eden went to your head? Okay, I mean, it's a joke. It's a Pella. Yibachu al kedusha shemecha. Davens for Sto, but he's not davening for Klal Yisrael. Does that make sense? Yibachu al kedusha shemecha. Omar. So Yaakov says, Evelei Yaakov. Better you'll go to my Edical, Yaakov, ask him to talk on behalf of the Klal Yisrael. The Havilei Tsar Gidul Bonim. He understands Tsar Gidul Bonim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu apparently is having Tsar Gidul Bonim. So what does he mean? So Yaakov will be your therapist here. Let him daven. But we know that that Yaakov was Midas HaRachamim. Tiferes is Rachamim. Rachamim is not between, is Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. When you daven for Rachamim, you got to know what you're doing here when you're davening, because you can daven for Chesed. We don't usually daven for Din. Maybe we should. But if you daven for Rachamim, you got to be careful with that, because Rachamim is saying, when you say, I have Rachamim on you, it means, or have Rachamim on me, it means I'm guilty, but be nice to me anyway. You ask for mercy when you're guilty. You don't ask for mercy when you're innocent. So you got to be careful. So it's you're implying guilt. You have to know what you're doing when you ask Hashem for Rachamim. So there's a right time for everything. But anyways, Avraham Avinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, go see Yaakov. Amar le Yaakov. Emale le Yaakov, Dahav le Tsar Gidul Bonim. Efshir the boy Rachmil, let him pray for the Jewish people.
Who's giving this Avram?
Avraham Avinu is giving the Eitzah Tasha. He came to the wrong address. As far as I've...
You got his pshat and plus a nice.
No, it needs tefillah, it needs rachmim, meaning they're guilty, and you're right. But maybe tefillah will work. And Yaakov is the Baal tefillah. We don't find Avraham Avinu davening so much. Yaakov is the one who was davening so much. Amrle, so Yaakov Avinu says, or he says to Yaakov Avinu, Banecha chatu. Hashem says to Yaakov Avinu, okay, let's try this. Amr lefanav Rebbeinu Shalom, Yibachu al kedusha shmecha. I'm not davening for the Jewish people. What is going on here? I'm not davening for the Jewish people. Yibachu shmecha. Amr, Hashem says, Loi b'savi taiba v'loi b'dar d'ke'etza. You can't trust the Zayda, you can't trust the Einigal. Amr le Yitzchak. Now Yitzchak was the Pachad, was the harsh one, was the Midas Hadin, was the... Amr le Yitzchak, Manecha Chatuli. Amr lefanav. So Yitzchak says, Rebbeinu Shalom, Banai v'loi banecha. My children, your children. Right? Banai v'loi banecha. And Hashem, I'll spend time in the whole Gemara, but Hashem related to this answer, and b'schus Yitzchak comes the Gula. Mufurish in the Gemara. The Gula is not b'schus Avraham, In other words, the Metzias is banecha chatu. We are roy for a gula, we're not roy for a gula. We should be roy for a gula. But if we're not roy for the gula, which the Gemara seems to be predicting here, banecha chatuli, people are, not paying attention to Torah, being too political, etc. So Yitzchak says, listen, these are your children. These are your children, and that works. So, Ekse Yecholiyot, that Avraham Avinu is mevater on Klal Yisrael. Yaakov Avinu is mevater on Klal Yisrael, and Yitzchak, who's the Midas Hadin, is not. Yeah.
I'm going to catch you if it says, with Abraham, that Yitzchak, it doesn't say with Yaakov, it says.
Maybe. So you see here, here, look at this. Avraham Avinu had Yitzchak and Yishmael. Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, go, throw him out, get rid of him. And he did. Same thing. The same thing. You're not going the way. You're not going the right way. You're not my son. You're not carrying on my derech. Leave the house. Get out of the house. Parashas Amazos, Yishmael. Yaakov Avinu, Shimon HaLevi, he gets angry, pushes them away. Yitzchak says, let me give a bracha to Esav. It's Keneged HaSeichel. Avraham Avinu should be the one who's being makar of Yishmael, and Yitzchak should be the one who's pushing away Esav. And we see that Yitzchak's being makar of Esav, so where's the...
Well, Avraham wanted to keep Yishmael with Sarah. Hashem says to him...
It was makabel, though.
I'm saying his meaning was to keep him. Sarah.
It could be, but he grew. He grew into... That's, you're learning the way we always learn. Think differently for a minute. So let me tell you what I think the pshat in all this is. So when I'm saying Avram, that Yitzchak gave a bracha to Esav, I'm just making the kasha bigger. I'm not making the kasha any smaller. But I just halodavarhu. That Yitzchak was the one who wanted to give a bracha to Esav, and Yitzchak's the one who brought the gula. Yitzchak's the one who didn't trash Bnei Yisrael, or whatever Avraham Avinu did. Yimalcha al kedusha shemecha. Yimalcha al kedusha shemecha. So the pshat is that I think we have mixed up what is chesed and what is gevura. So the in other words, chesed we like and gevura we don't. But I think that might not be the right derech exactly. It's the Yitzchak that saved us. It's going to save us in Yirtzeh Hashem. But the pshat is that, in other words, if you're, I'm so afraid to talk about Avraham Avinu. I'm just saying, l'saber soizen. But if you're really all chesed, so I think one of the nicest men and most philanthropic men I ever met was a guy in Australia, not from, and his kids were like all over the place doing this, doing that, becoming Hindus and drug addicts, and everyone a different mahalach. And I said to him, forget about being frum, put the brakes on your kids a little bit, just make a little bit of. I love them, I trust them, they'll do what they want. So it's a midah of Avraham Avinu. The midah of Avraham Avinu that can be used very, very good, ahava. And it's a midah of just everybody's doing what they think they should be doing, and everybody's doing what they feel is the right thing. And everybody has their choices to make, and I'm not judging anybody. And there's no boundaries to Ava. Ava mekalkelis es ashur. There's no boundaries to Ava. So on the one hand, he threw away Ishmael. But on the other hand, take a look at the midah of Ishmael. The midah of Ishmael was, that's not mine, I'm saying what all the Kadmonim say. The midah of Ishmael was a midah of para Adam, the Torah says. And para Adam means that he crossed all boundaries. It didn't make any difference. Look at Ishmael today. There's no boundaries. You're going to kill me? I don't care. I'm going to kill you? I certainly don't care. There's no, a para Adam means like a pri. Just something which just goes out of the gather. No boundaries. Ava has no boundaries. So we look at Ishmael's B'nai Ava. Hard to say those words. But what it means, B'nai, it's so hard to win a war with someone who has no boundaries. We think, okay, listen, we bombed your buildings, we've taken away your leaders, no, that's okay. It's okay. You're going to die. It's how do you win a war? Like how do you win this war? So that's para Adam, which came from Chazal say in the Zohar. The para Adam came from the midas ha'ava of Avraham Avinu. Yeah, do you understand this? That Avraham Avinu was without boundaries. Obviously, was a tzaddik yisod olam. And Yitzchak and Yishmael was without boundaries. And Yitzchak did a tikkun for Avram and created din. Gvura zudin pachad Yitzchak. What is din? Din is when there's Niagara Falls falling down, and I take a cup of water, and here's a cup of water. I gave the Ava a kli to be usable, a kli that's utilitarian, and that could actually be machzik mayim. So the din that we're all afraid of, is that a bad thing? What is din? In other words, let's say, I said this year a couple of weeks on Shabbos, a couple of weeks ago, that nobody invented electricity. Electricity is in the Bria. What electricity is in the Bria. It's been there since Hashem created the world. It was discovered 3,000 years ago that there was electricity. To harness it and to turn it into a computer or even a light bulb, that's cool. But that's din. That's din. That's a din of putting a lavush around the chesed. This lavush is called ritcha. It's not a pleasant. It's pachad yitzchak. It's not necessarily pleasant to be rounded in. This is called the midah of Yitzchak is the midah of kaf aleim har kegigis. So we were full of ava, lechtech acharai b'midbar b'aretz lo zarua, right? Avas sayich. We were full of ava, but what the kaf aleim har kegigis is it added some boundaries into this. You're not para Adam. You went to Yishmael, Maksiv, maybe. No, we're Nasav and Ishmael. You're not para Adam. There has to be some kind of a geder here, some kind of a gvul. And that's what the Gemara is saying is the midah of Yitzchak. So comes Rav Tzadok and he tells us that Rabbi Seinu Zal Perak Chelek Krau Ritcha L'chein Amar B'Shabbos Perak Rabbi Akiva, and this is the pshat in the Gemara, which who knows the pshat in this Gemara if not for this Rav Tzadok. Al pasuk Hi Ata Avinu Yeshayahu. The Gemara brings the pasuk Hi Ata Avinu. You Yitzchak are the one. Rashi says V'Koyel Yitzchak Hi Ata Avinu Koyel Yitzchak. You're the one who's going to bring the gula, this din, and who are we fighting with? We're fighting with a Yishmael. It's a davar nifla, which has no gvul. Has no boundaries. Sheyitzchak hu ayagoyel al yedei midasai. So the same way that he gave a bracha to Esav, if we could take that power of Esav, that's what Mashiach is supposed to do. If he could take the power of Esav and harness it, and bring it into some kind of a kli where it's not all over the place, then Esav is a gewaldige power. This is the Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, right? The Gemara says, Hamleya, Hachreva, that Rebbe and Antoninus, that there could be a time, there was a time for a short time, and there will be a time when one is the kli and one is the pneumius. It's okay.
That's the word Yitzchak, which normally is like boiling over in no form, so it represents the revolution of creating a form.
So that's a very good question. But what I want to say with Ritcha is just simply that it's something which is inside of me. It's not external. So onto itself, it has no gvul. And that's why koifenoisei. That's good for the koifenoisei. Give a kli to that which is boiling over. So it's a controlled boiling over. That's what kaf aleim harkigigas means. Says Reb Tzadok, v'chein etzel kol prat. This is true by everybody. Hashem Yisbarach. This is not just the history of the future, or not just the history of Har Sinai, or even Purim. V'chein etzel kol prat. Hashem Yisbarach sheleach lo hirurei tshuva u'machshavei shel kabbalas o malchus shamayim ba'al karchai v'shaloi b'rtzaynai. People are going to have hirurei tshuva whether we want to or not. In other words, we're forced into tshuva. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So the Gemara says that's Ritcham or Rav Nachman, bring it on. The Gemara says, Rav Nachman says, bring it on. Okay? Like, if Klal Yisrael is not coming to it on their own, as Avraham Avinu would have wanted, that's what he would have wanted. Let him, So Reb Nachman said, and it's kilo the same as Yitzchak. Reb Nachman and Sanhedrin said, "Bring it on, Tavay Aleinu, Idin Deritcha. Let's bring it on." And it's not a bad thing. In other words, like it's the kid who's mature enough to turn around to his father and says, "Just push me off the board. Just push me." Say there. That's what I want. So if you want, why don't you jump? Now let's cover this point. Doesn't happen automatically, mamish. Isarusa de lasato ksas. Now the thing is that everybody knows. I don't have to explain. There's isarusa de lasato and isarusa de laela. Meaning, Isarusa means Hisarus, de Lasata means from down here, Isarusa de Lasata, or Isarusa de Laela. So, sometimes you can just be, walking down the street and Hashem put something in our mind which is Gevaldik, that's Isarusa de Laela. Sometimes, we work for something and we come to a Hisarus Milamata. We've come to this Isaurus Milamata. We also know that the Isaurus, it's like a circle. Isarusa de Lasata will bring on more Isarusa de Laela, and Isarusa de Laela will bring more Isarusa de Lasata, and it's like, as I always say, like the rain cycle. The more it rains, the more evaporates into the clouds. The more that's in the clouds, the more it rains, and that's the way the cycle works. What comes first in a circle? The Isarusa de Lasata, Isarusa de Laela. So the Zayar brings a raya. The Zayar asks this question in Parshas Noach, and the Zayar says, "Well, what comes first? How does it work with the circle?" Hashem made the circle. So the Zayar brings a raya that Isarusa de Lasata always comes before Isarusa de Laela. A raya from the end of Parshas Noach that Avraham Avinu, or let's say Lech Lecha. Hashem said to him, "Lech Lecha." Go. I'm not even telling you where you're going. It's going to be a surprise. and you have to leave your father's house. You have to leave everything. Tremendous. Lech Lecha. But if you go like 3 psukim earlier at the end of Noach, it says that Avraham Avinu was going Artza Canaan. Where are you going to Canaan? What was the big chiddush? Surprise, going to Israel. He was going to Israel. That's what he was doing. He was going to Israel. So what's the Lech Lecha? So the answer is, says the Zayar, that you have the Isarusa de Lasata of Avraham Avinu being Gairim, the Lech Lecha of Isarusa de Laela. So you're not going to get this kind of this privilege of being forced to have Hirhurei Tshuva unless you do something. Klal Yisrael has to do something to be Zocha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to force them into doing Tshuva. Got to get on the board, on the diving board, right? You got to get, you have to do something. Rak gam lozeh tzarech hachana isarusa d'lasatok sasa. So what do we do? What should we do? And just like we find that we had to go through Galus Mitzrayim before we could get the Torah, the Galusenu, and we had to go through all these horrible millennia of Galus before we can get to Vias HaMashiach. Shelazeh shel melucha bal korchenu Shelazeh shel melucha bal korchenu achano gam ken mitzad Hashem yisparach v'hu yisurin sheshaleach. These are the yisurim that came from Hashem, but he's not telling us what we did. V'lechein sarach kol echad liyisurim. It's going back and forth here, so I just want to, let's go further. K'majamar ba'arachin v'ayisurin hem gam ken mitzad haritcha mimidas kvarasa yisparach. Okay, let's pause for a minute, not to go too fast. It means to say that when a person has le'aleinu yisurim, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu forcing us into a position. It's a ritcha. It's in a position for us to be what we want to be. You know, I just say something I've been saying a lot for the last year or so, that nobody's growing without challenges, right? Like, period. Person has no challenges, there's no growth. Did anybody ever see anybody grow without challenges? You stay where you are. Why am I growing? When I'm challenged, whether it's academically, financially, in health, or whatever, so I grow. The person is diagnosed with with an illness, so you start paying attention, and you're careful what you eat, and you're careful what you do, and you grow from it. This shouldn't be such a kasha to us. Like, why is Hashem so? I mean, it's the challenge, the adversity, which is our greatest teacher, and it's the challenges which pushes us to grow. That's why every athlete's working out all the time, training, konunut. Right? that's what it's all about. Like, it's a crazy thing, but like that's the way it is. Okay, so what's the Sarusa de Lasata that we're supposed to do? And this is what he tells us. Yeshi Sarusa de Lasata hamoyol lazeh. I'll give you a good Isarusa de Lasata, says Rav Tzadok. V'hu hayira. Hu hayira. Shugam kain mimidazu. Again, think Yitzchak. V'al yedei zeh ma'or l'malo limshol of malkarchai. K'may adain ala eved. This is the pshat in the pasuk. Ma Hashem Elokecha shayil mi mach ki'im liyira. Gaval the pshat. That all Hashem is asking you is have yira. Why? Because the yira is Isarusa de Lasata, and that'll be Gairam the Isarusa de la Ela. So, like the way, how do we get the ball rolling? How do we start this whole process from happening? The answer is to have yira. Huh? Good. Good. Very good.
The kid on the diving board gets fear of jumping off, but of course it's hard to push him off.
Yeah. You know, if somebody gets on stage, I don't know about Ari is different, but if he gets on stage, I don't know, like I get in front of a big oilam to speak, I get nervous. Now people say, they laugh at me when I say this, like, I'm shy, I'm nervous. Like, but the truth is, like, I think that the more nervous I am, the better the drasha. There's a certain nervous energy, which makes you maskim. Something like you want it, you can start taking tranquilizers or something like that. But it's dafka, like the nervous energy, which makes the adrenaline go, and then you go. There's I'm not a psychologist, but I think that there's such a thing. But I want to share something with you for a minute. That like last week's parsha, it says that Ha'ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam Asher Al Pnei Adam. Moshe was an Anav. When we think of an Anav, we're thinking about like I don't know, what am I doing here? And that's how Moshe Rabbeinu was, right? Like, what am I doing here? Which brought the whole Muslim movement to ask, what, Moshe Rabbeinu, you don't know who you are, you don't know what you are, you don't know your co-host, don't you see you did the whole Gula for Mitzrayim, don't you see how influential you are, like, what are you being such an anav about? Like, so everybody has a different Torah on what does it mean, the aniv. I want to tell you what I understand this so well, this pasuk. Aish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. He talked to Hashem peh el peh. Is there anybody who could talk to Hashem peh el peh and not become humble? In other words, whatever you think you are, when you encounter Hashem, infinite wisdom, Torah, like even if you'd see like let's say any of us would meet Rabbi Kiva Eger. Okay, I know, I do Daf Yomi. I mean, like, you met Rabbi Kiva Eger. Like, of course you're humble. I always said nobody could be a Balgaiva in front of Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I'm just putting it in my own experience. All of a sudden you feel, what are you going to say? People said that they stood, in Talmidim for years, they stood in front of Rav Aaron Cutler and they couldn't talk. When Rav Aaron died, they didn't stop talking. talk, a billion shiur. But Moshe Rabbeinu was the Anav Mikol Adam because he was the greatest, that he had the greatest experience. But he realized that he was a piece of dust next to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the yira that we're talking about, you're walking around being afraid. If the Isarusa de Lasata, Lanias Daiti, when Rav Tzadok says that Isarusa Lasata is yira, just know before who you stand. Ma Hashem alekecha shoyel mimcha mimach ki im liyira oisi. Just know who you are and what you are, and okay, that's your Isarusa de Lasata, and everything will come in after that. And that was Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gemara Ferzais in Gabi Moshe Rabbeinu Milsa Zutrasahi. That's what he stood in front of Hashem. Once you stand in front of Hashem, there's no bucket for Gaiva, right? Gaiva v'agdula l'chai olam. Where's the? So what's the Isarusa l'sata? No, just know that there's anivus. And then the last few lines. V'zel mitzvah tzitzis al zeh. We talked also nun hey about tzitzis. V'zel mitzvah tzitzis al zeh. Shehi liyira kanaida. K'mashamar b'zayir seif shlach. How does tzitzis bring you to yira? It does. We learned to Gemara Menachos. There's a lot of Gemaras that tzitzis stopped people from doing averas they were about to do. What is it about the tzitzis? K'mashamar b'zayir seif shlach. The tchelas hi yira. So, Rashi says you look at the tzitzis and you'll see a gematria and you'll see taryag. But the Zohar says something different over here. The Zohar says that you have in your tzitzis, if you're zocha to real tzitzis, you have lavan and tchelas. So you have lavan and tchelas. So you should know that the lavan is midas ha'chesed of Avraham Avinu, and the tchelas is midas hadin. Okay, so it's a nice color, the blue. What does it mean? Like if you want midas hadin, make them red. So what's the union of tchelas? Chazal. You look at the tchelas, you see din. What's the din? The din is, tchelas is daimel yam, and yam daimel rakia, and rakia daimel kisei hakavod. You know what it means? I'm small in front of you, Hashem. In other words, I'm looking at the tchelas and I'm remembering the yam. When you see the yam, you realize how small you are. The yam reminds you of the rakia, which is even bigger. Agav, the Zohar in the beginning of Bereshis says that the rakia was created on the first day, Yehi Or, that was the creation of the Midas Chesed. And the second day was Yehi Rakia, Yehi Rakia, first in the Zayar, that was Midas Hadin. The Rakia is the Midas Hadin. So let's just close with this. What does Midas Hadin mean? Midas Hadin means, the Yitzchak means, although the Midas Hadin means that I understand, like I just open up your head to see what's going on in this world, and it's so small. Sometimes, like you look at a big mountain range, or you look at the sky, and you say, "Wow, how inspiring!" What's inspiring? It's inspiring. Like I'm so small, and that's so big, and the world is so big, and it's niflois habrayah. It's not a miracle per se, but of course it's a miracle. You make a bracha on it. You know, if it's yotzim min haklal, you make a bracha on it. Oisem isa bracious. So ma Hashem alekecha shoel mimakim liyiroisi is to just know who you are, what you are, and don't get carried away. That's the Yisarus of the Lasata. How do you get there? So says the Gemara, look at your tzitzis. You're zocha to see Kehillas and love on. If you don't have Kehillas, it's not reminding you of the Yam, right? I'm not getting into the parsha of Kehillas. I'm just saying that the tzitzis are supposed to have Kehillas, right? So if once you have Kehillas, okay, it's reminding me of the Yam. So this little string is showing me how small I am in comparison. There's a story, maybe you know better than me, that Einstein, relativity. So he, in the middle of one of his great drushes, he was always trying to explain what he had to say in terms of, in a way that people can understand it. It didn't work. It's hard to understand. But he always tried to bring it down to earth. But I know, I read his biography. I know he said that you understand the cosmos, the heavens, now that you understand so much. So he said it's like a person trying to touch the sky and he can't do it, so he stands up on a chair. But like relativity. But at one point in one of his famous drushes, he took out of his suit, he took a pin, and he said the size of the top of this pin in this auditorium, and he said something like you could fit whatever it is. It's almost infinite amount of tops of the pin in this auditorium. He says, and this auditorium is the top of a pin in the city, which is the top of the pin, and they go on and on and on until you get to the Shemayim. Like, you have to understand it, and we are, one tiny part of the top of the pin. So it means to say, it actually doesn't make us feel lowly. It makes us feel in awe, inspired. And here's the good news, that the big thing is Hashem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually is Gomel Chasadim Tovim. Actually, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you actually get up in Shemona Esrei and talk to him. And he listens, Uvda. He listens, you talk to him. Everybody knows this, right? You talk and he listens. So this is the unbelievable thing that, but the Yira, they talk about Yiras HaInesh, Yiras HaRoimamas. It's just knowing this is what Yitzchak was, able to do. Now, once you harness that, so now that's the Kaf Aleim Harkigigas. Get it together, and you'll have this Kimu Masha Kiblu Kfar. You'll have this tremendous Hisayrus of Tshuva